Galicia is the starting point of our journey through romantic northern Spain as we travel south along the Atlantic coast. A Coruña is the region's largest industrial city and shipping harbour. It is believed that it was founded by the Phoenicians in 60 AD. The Romans conquered this harbour city that has always been associated with the sea. Unlike many other Galician cities, neither the nobility nor the church has ever played a significant role here. Santiago de Compostela, the city of 100 towers. For pilgrims, a most important destination, the light of Christianity. Since the Middle Ages, this city was, apart from Jerusalem and Rome, the most important pilgrimage destination in Christendom. Spain's most religious city continues to attract the faithful who visit the grave of Holy Jacobus. Some centuries ago, each of the large villages of the Rias Baixas prospered thanks to fishing, as did Pontevedra, whose old town has been well preserved, with cobbled streets, intimate squares, and the residential palaces of the city's former elite. A small rose garden points in the direction of the Convento de San Francisco, a 14th century monastery that contains the grave of Payo Gomez, a city with a long and colourful history. The journey continues south through this tranquil Spanish province. Cabo Udra is a nature reserve where tranquil, isolated bays and rock-strewn sandy beaches are ideal for bathing and relaxing in the sun. Vigo, reminiscent of the UK's Liverpool, is Galicia's largest city. The name of the city is of Roman origin. It is believed that Vicus Spassorum was the starting point for Caesar's campaign against Britannia, as well as a storage area for his empire's oil, fish and wine. Next, the Moors invaded, and Vigo finally came under the rule of Catholic King Fernando. In 1619, Turkish pirates invaded Rio de Vigo. As a result, the city was later fortified with sturdy walls and a mighty fortress. In 1529, the city began to trade with South America, and this brought with it a new wave of prosperity. Then followed the Industrial Revolution, which gave rise to a modern commercial city with a huge fishing industry. After a short drive, the Bay of Bayona suddenly appears, a paradise for summer holidaymakers. The first city in Europe to hear of Columbus's discovery of the New World in his caravel La Pinta. 4 years after their arrival, the Catholic kings decided to construct a fort here. It was built to fend off any possible attack by Berber or English forces and to protect the harbour. For many centuries, a guarda, the female guard, has watched over the river border with Portugal. and in the wooded mountain city of Monte Santa Tecla, the Celts established a settlement. Here there were more than 1,000 buildings that dated back to the 6th and 3rd centuries BC and formed part of a prehistoric settlement. Later, a Catholic monastery was built in this remote mountain region. The Celts left their traces everywhere, and even today it exudes an atmosphere that evokes the ancient echoes of a remarkable people. Madrid, Europe's most geographically elevated metropolis, a royal capital of history, outstanding buildings and cultural treasures, the heart of a bull in the center of the sun. Most of Spain's royal palaces are in Madrid, the capital of Spain since the 17th century, including the Palacio Real, that even today serves as a royal castle. Its exterior contains elements of Italian classical design, and the 2,000 rooms of its interior are dominated by late Baroque, wonderful works of art and exquisite furnishings. Huge carpets, precious frescoes and priceless crystal chandeliers adorn various of the main rooms. Here, the Bourbon King Felipe V attempted to create a Spanish version of Versailles, and he eventually achieved his goal, but it cost his subjects dear. Opposite the castle is Madrid's most recent cathedral, La Almudena. The cathedral has a combination of styles between New Gothic and Classical, and in 1993 was consecrated by the Pope. It was 200 years in construction. Legend has it that Christian conquerors discovered a picture of the Holy Virgin Mary on the Moorish city wall on the site of today's cathedral. They believed it was a sign from heaven. A monument of ecclesiastical power next to the worldly. Madrid also has a boulevard that has transformed this vast city into a major metropolis, the Gran Via. In 1910, the city fathers created a thoroughfare through the northern area of the city. It extends for 1,300 meters. The Gran Via compares in both design and dimensions with the exquisite streets of Paris and New York, with splendid noble buildings along with the contemporary. The Plata De La Fibales is where many of the city's most important arterial roads meet. This grandiose area comprises several fine buildings. The huge Palacio de las Comunicaciones looks more like a cathedral than a working post office. But the central focus of attention is the Fibales well that dates back to the 18th century. But the goddess of fertility and protector of cities is not in a suitably revered location. Those who want to venture closer to the statue must first conquer the city's traffic. Plaza Mayor, the square of all squares. From Mexico to Peru, the Plaza Mayor served as the model for the design of a central meeting point. The Casa De La Panaderia, with its abundant frescoes, is the oldest building on the square that is dominated by a statue of King Felipe on horseback. Because of the uniform height of the houses that stand closely packed together, the square emanates a simple elegance that is highlighted by the surrounding arcades, a favorite tourist rendezvous, a square for all reasons. At the Plata De Toros Las Ventas, everything centers around the bullfight. In 1919, this huge bullfight arena was built in neo-Moorish style. A decorative red brick facade adorns this incredible building that contains 23,000 seats arranged in a large circle. In Madrid, the bloody spectacle is considered to be a sacred ritual, and the toreador enjoys a high degree of respect. The Rastro is the largest flea market in Spain and has more than 3,000 stalls that attract a total of 300,000 visitors. Today, a vast area of second-hand goods, clothing, books and antiques. During the Middle Ages, this was a district of butchers and tanners. The center of the Plaza de España is popular with photographers. Beneath the watchful eyes of the great poet Miguel Cervantes, they proceed toward their destiny. Don Quixote, on his famous old nag, and his crafty old servant Sancho Panza, who rides astride his donkey. The green swathes and shady trees that surrounded these wells have witnessed many events as the people of Madrid have walked by here for many centuries. The city quarter of Lavapiés has managed to maintain its provincial charm within this modern metropolis, with narrow alleys and small shops. Although there are no important buildings here, this is where much of Madrid's daily life takes place. It's like being in a small Castilian village. The Iglesia San Fernando is an unusual sight, yet little remains of it. Just a few remnants of the walls of a former monastery church that dates back to the 18th century. Named after Christopher Columbus, fountains decorate the Plaza de Colón. The entrance to the Centro Cultural is obscured by a cascade of water. What the Gran Via was 100 years ago, the Paseo de la Castellana achieved comparable renown at the end of the last millennium, a replica of Manhattan. The Zona Azca, a modern city district with spectacular skyscrapers and spacious streets, where chrome, glass and concrete dominate the futuristic skyline. Avant-garde architecture in Madrid. The Parque Del Retiro is the green lung of the city. The city's 120-hectare oasis is the Garden of Madrid, and since the time of the First Republic has been open to the public. Far from the dirty and narrow alleys of the old town, here in the 17th century, King Felipe IV built a better world, a place of rest, a grand illusion. No expense was spared by the king for his open-air theatre. Entire naval fleets sank below the waters of the lake, and thunderstorms and earthquakes made the Retiro tremble. This artistic world survived for less than a century, but the regal flamboyance of those times blends well with the present day. Toledo is one of the oldest and proudest cities in Spain. During Roman times, one of the greatest settlements was established here. Elevated on a mighty rock foundation, the city's unique location served as a useful purpose for its eventual defense. The city was the scene of many a battle. Long before the arrival of the cathedral, and prior to rule from Castile in 712 AD, the capital of the Visigoths was violently integrated with the Muslim empire of Al-Andalus. Throughout the centuries, Toledo has been regarded as a cultural center of medieval Spain, a city of three cultures. In 1229, construction work on the monumental Toledo Cathedral began. In 1493, the Gothic masterpiece was completed. The proportions of this enormous cathedral make it one of the most spectacular in Spain. Nevertheless, its master builders must have been experts in Gothic style. At the end of the 16th century, Toledo became popular as a city of art and artists. In 1577, El Greco came to live here. Now the city's buildings have regained their former glory, and the citizens of Toledo are proud of their historic inheritance. Swathed in colorful and dramatic history, Toledo enjoys a unique place among all of Spain's old and fascinating Spanish cities. Around 50 kilometers northwest of Madrid, Spain's capital city, the austere yet opulent residence of El Escorial extends up the southern slopes of the Sierra de Guadarrama. It was built during the rule of King Philip II, after his father Karl V ordered him to build a magnificent church in which he would eventually be buried. This building contains some remarkable works of art and many priceless treasures. In rooms such as the Pudridero, the significance of El Escorial as a burial place is evident. It was within this room that the royal sarcophaguses were stored for 10 years prior to their being interred. The impressive art museum contains an exclusive collection by various important artists. Titian, Tintoretto, Rubens, Van Dyck, Hieronymus Bosch, Velázquez, and El Greco adorn the walls. The splendid marble coffins with their golden inscriptions add both dignity and elegance to this burial place. The kings seem to demonstrate their former power even in death. Thanks to these outstanding and precious ceiling paintings, it is easy to understand why in Spain this building is known as the eighth wonder of the world. The king's deep religious belief in Catholicism was signified by his own relatively modest rooms that were located next to the church. Philip II was not only a larger-than-life tyrant, he was also an educated man who supported science and the arts. And El Escorial was his most significant bequest to Spain. Barcelona, one of the most lively harbour cities in the Mediterranean, and after Madrid, Spain's second largest city and the capital of Catalonia. On the wide and shady boulevard of La Rambla that passes through the old town to the harbour, life goes on both night and day. Directly next to it is La Boqueria, the city's finest and most beautiful market. On the other side of the Rambla is Barri Gothic, the old town's Gothic district, in the centre of which is La Seu Cathedral. Reconstruction of what had been a Christian church destroyed by the Moors began in the 11th century, and in the 14th it was given its Gothic appearance. The small dark alleys around the cathedral are testament to the somewhat cramped building style of medieval times. Intimate squares, small palaces and tangled alleys provide a good insight into the history and daily life of the old city. This is where it all began. By way of aggressive expansion, Barcelona enjoyed a high season of both cultural and financial success. The Museo Marítim Drassanes is situated in the royal dockyards that were built when the city's prosperity was at its zenith. Its buildings are unique examples of Gothic architecture. The vast dimensions of the dockyard allowed 30 ships to be built simultaneously in the name of the Catalonian Aragon crown. It brings to mind great adventures on the open seas, discoveries, conquests, and the courage of Spain's daring seafarers. Next to the dockyards is the old harbour of Portvel. The huge 60-metre-high column of Christopher Columbus greets those caught in the busy hustle and bustle of the surrounding area. For the first World Exhibition in 1888, Gaeta Buigas built this remarkable monument from the top of which there's a good view of both city and harbour. The city has always met the challenges of the sea, and the same is true today. The round trip passes newly built harbour buildings and the world's largest cantilever bridge that opens up to make way for larger vessels. A little unusual and extremely interesting. A journey on the Transbordador Aeri, a cable railway that travels from the harbour district. The Funicular De Montjuic is another alternative. The mountain is highly significant in that it was the location of Barcelona's first settlement. During the hostile conflicts between Castile and Catalonia, the Castello was transformed into a mighty fortress, with huge walls and defensive ditches. It provided a good view of enemy forces and their positions. Near to the foot of the mountain is the splendid Palau Nationale, one of the city's most impressive sights, and built for the World Exhibition with great historical panache. Two Venetian towers mark the monumental entrance into the World Exhibition area. It all adds up to a magnificent view, with the well and the Palau Nationale in the background. Few parks are as famous as the Parque Güell. With this, Antonio Gaudí created a new design concept in this fabulous garden city. This striking snake bench is a popular attraction. It was built as a frame for the roof of the market hall that is supported by 90 Doric columns. Nearly 3 kilometers of paths wind their way over this elevated area. Here, both art and nature combine in perfect harmony. Of 60 homes that were originally planned here, only 2 were built. One of them for the artist himself, the Casa Museo Gaudí. Gaudí transformed a scant and arid mountain slope into the protected landscape of today. The great artist was also allowed to create his utopian dreams within the city, the Casa Mila being an example. Not one wall is straight. Glass and plaster were used to decorate the facade, and colourful pottery ornaments add the finishing touch. La Sagrada Familia, the unfinished. In 1833, Antonio Gaudí was given the go-ahead to work on the construction of the partly completed Church of the Poor. And he dedicated the last 40 years of his life to what remains to be his main, yet unfinished masterpiece. Even today, its main hall is a huge building site. But despite the scaffolding, its huge columns still display great originality and incredible sculptures. Here, unique works of art are created according to the detailed plans of the great master. This Temple of the Holy Family was built according to certain financial constraints. However, Gaudí's artistic temperament far exceeded any such restrictions. The master wanted to crown his lifetime's work with this religious building, and he achieved his goal. But alas, La Sagrada Familia remains unfinished. The Carro de Caballos leads once more along the Ramblas. We travel on through the alleys of Barcelona, which is surely Europe's most beautiful Mediterranean city of culture. Passing by a park that was created specially for the Olympic Games, and which has become an integral part of this remarkable city. Not far away from the harbour is the zoo, a very modern and innovative environment for a large variety of wildlife. The aquarium and dolphinarium are the zoo's most spectacular attractions, including dolphin displays that are extremely popular with visitors. The zoo is a successful combination of adventure, entertainment, and the exotic. Just like Barcelona itself, it's a place of creativity and fun. The Costa del Sol, the name of the southern Mediterranean coast of Spain. In former times, a variety of bumpy roads connected this region's sandy bays and remote fishing villages, where once the Phoenicians and Romans settled long before the arrival of the Moors. The Balcón de Europa is situated in Nerja, the most beautiful village on this part of the coast. A short journey up into the coastal mountains leads to the picturesque mountain villages that nestle on the slopes of the Sierra de Tejeda. A good alternative to the beach life of the coast. Andalusian atmosphere in the mountains. Since Phoenician times, the earlier Malaga was a busy trading port that was defended by the Castillo de Gibralfaro that is located on the summit of a mountain. The Cathedrale, also known as La Manquita, symbolizes a Catholic victory on the former site of a mosque. Today, Malaga is a modern city, a center of tourism on the Costa del Sol, and with a customary sandy beach directly outside the front door. In the hilly inland area of the Costa del Sol is the pretty white mountain village of Mijas, a popular visiting place for those holidaying on the coast. Marbella, rendezvous of the rich and famous, a city of high society. It was from here in Moorish times that the white villages of the Sierra Bermeja were defended. Along the southern coast are several newly built yachting harbours, such as Soto Grande. A little further south, the village of San Roque is also worth a visit. The inhabitants of Gibraltar settled here at the beginning of the 18th century, following the acquisition of the rock by the English. The historic journey through the white villages of Andalusia begins in the Castella De La Frontera, a noble fortress that dates back to the 12th century. With its Moorish ruins, Jimena de la Frontera looks like an eagle's nest. The Christian monarchs drove both the Jews and the Moors from these villages. However, their influences remain to the present day. The Pueblos Blancos are of practical construction. Their thick walls protect against the heat of the sun. The buildings always look new because each year they are treated to a fresh coat of whitewash. With a little imagination and the fabulous panoramic view, it's easy to visualize the adventurous times of this region's dramatic past. Ronda enjoys a unique location. It sits on a rock plateau above a 165-meter steep sloped canyon to which it is linked by the 18th century Puente Nuevo. Both the Romans and the Moors, who were defeated by the Catholic kings in 1485, left their traces in this city. In 1784, it was here that Spain's oldest arena was inaugurated, and where the famous matador Romero introduced the first bullfight. The pueblos look like white spots created by human hand, scattered across the green landscape. Grazalema is located on a hillside at an altitude of 800 meters above sea level. Arcos de la Frontera is a potpourri of white houses, church towers and mountain peaks. Throughout the centuries, this strategically important city was constantly besieged and fortified. The white villages, located along the Ruta por los Pueblos Blancos, shine out of the landscape like a multitude of tiny pearls. An intriguing sight that captures the essence of Spain and the atmospheric simplicity of Andalusia. Seville, a gem of a city, Andalusia's most fascinating metropolis. In the center of the old town is the Real Alcazar, originally home to numerous Moorish monarchs and later the domicile of Spanish kings. Various epochs and royal families have made their mark here, an impressive architectural masterpiece. Most notably, it was King Carl V who ruled a huge realm from Seville over which the sun never set. With its labyrinth of white alleys, Santa Cruz is the city's old Jewish district and is located close to both the Real Alcazar and the Cathedral. One of the city's most beautiful palaces, the Casa de Pilatos, is still in private hands, a gem of feudal times. For the Romans and later the Moors, the Rio Guadalquivir was an important resource. It was from here that ships set sail for the new continent. The Plata De Toros and the seasonal hustle and bustle of its bullfights dominates the El Arenal, the city's former harbour district. The old town is dominated by Spain's largest cathedral. The Giralda is all that remains of Seville's Almohadian mosque. What remained of the temple was destroyed by the Christians. As Seville developed into the most important trading centre of its time, the cathedral was built as a symbol of Christianity. Golden and marble altars dominate the interior. The altar of the Capilla Mayor is adorned with 2.5 tons of gold leaf. From the 97-metre-high bell tower, there's a wonderful view of the city. The Parque de Maria Luisa is the city's most popular park. Horse-drawn carriages constantly travel up and down its broad avenues. Within the park is the somewhat unreal-looking Plaza Espana, a fine semicircular building whose facade is flanked by stunning towers. The Hospital de la Caridad comprises a church and an old people's home. It was founded and financed by a benevolent sinner of the 17th century. In the north of the city, there are still a few remnants of the old city wall. Just off the tourist trail is the La Macarena District, that derived its name from the Holy Virgin. The city contains the fascinating cultural heritage of the Moors and Christians, Columbus, bullfights, and Don Juan. Cordoba, once the most important metropolis of the Caliphate. A city of harmony and also great contrast. Cordoba is a city in which the history of the caliphs, Romans, Jews and Christians is still very much alive. This was the center of the Arabian realm of Al-Andalus that reached its peak in around 1000 AD. The city's most important building is the Mesquite Cathedral in the center of the old town. It is undoubtedly the most splendid mosque of Moorish Islamic origin on the Iberian Peninsula. The interior of this sacred building is known as the Forest of 1,000 Columns. Each of its columns is unique. It creates an overwhelming impression of infinity. After the Christian conquest, a cathedral was built within the mosque's prayer hall that looks somewhat incongruous among the Islamic architecture. Juderia is the name of the former Jewish quarter, whose labyrinth-like complex of alleys extend around the mosque. Synagogues and statues are reminders of a bygone time. With its famous inn, the Plaza del Potro is one of the city's landmarks and was mentioned by Cervantes. The Plaza Santa Marina dates back to the 17th century and was once used as a bullfighting arena and also as a theatrical stage. Today it is frequently used as a marketplace. The Museo Archaeological is housed within a palace and contains a considerable collection of early Christian, Roman, West Gothic, and most notably, Islamic discoveries. From the center of the city tower the columns of a huge Roman temple, a curious sight in the midst of a modern city. Palafio De Viana is a well-preserved building that dates back to the 14th century, with 17 courtyards and a rich array of colorful Andalusian flowers. The Medina is encircled by sturdy walls and old city gates, and the mighty fortress was a residence for the Catholic kings. In the 14th century, King Alfonso built this Alcazar with its huge park, following Ferdinand the Holy's termination of 5 centuries of Arabian rule. It's quite amazing how this relatively small city is able to afford its own zoo. and each paying visit is a welcome contribution to its occupants. Directly opposite the zoo is the Jardín Botánico. On a remote city hill is the San Geronimo Monastery. And some kilometers to the west on the Sierra Morena mountain range is Madinat al-Zahra, the ancient royal city of the Caliph that he named after his favorite wife Zahara. Granada, once inhabited by the Moors, a city crowned by hills. Since the 7th century BC, Iberians, Romans and West Goths settled here. But it was during Arab rule that the city first gained prominence. The Baños Árabes, ancient Arab baths that date back to the 11th century, have been fully restored and are open to the public. The Monastero De La Catura is located just outside the Old Town and was founded at the beginning of the 16th century as a Carthusian monastery. It is decorated with an abundance of gold and marble. The Hospital Real dates back to the beginning of the 16th century. Originally an infirmary for the poor, it later became a hospital and today serves as the university's administrative HQ. Granada has a truly unique and captivating atmosphere, one that has inspired poets, musicians, and countless travelers from all over the world. A lively and contemporary university city, and at the same time, the guardian of an historic past that draws in a multitude of tourists keen to experience its special charm. The Queen of Castile and the King of Aragon had the Capilla Real built next to the cathedral. After having fulfilled their goal of banishing Islam, this was where they chose to be interred. The center of the tomb is dominated by the marble mausoleums of Fernando and Isabella, who lie at rest side by side. The cathedral is located on the site of the city's former main mosque. Building commenced in late Gothic style and was completed in that of the early Renaissance. Monumental columns support the huge building, in which there are splendid golden altars and an old capitol hall that contains precious church treasures. But the city's most famous building is the Alhambra, former residence of the Arab conquerors, one of the most important Islamic buildings in Spain. The view from here is overwhelming. The mighty La Alcazaba Fortress stands proudly on the summit of the hill. When Granada became an independent Islamic kingdom in 1238, the Alhambra served as a military headquarters, administrative center, and royal residence. Though he never resided in it, within the Red Castle, King Carl V built a monumental palace. A small entrance portal leads to the front hall of the old royal palace of the Nasrid-Den monarchs, in which ministers once met and where the Sultan administered justice. Some of the courtyards contain water basins that cast their reflections on the walls and Moorish-style windows. The most famous courtyard is the Lion Yard, in which both the well and the colonnades were many years in construction. The wells and summer palace of the adjoining Moorish gardens in the Generalife were once a place of tranquility and a paradise-like oasis. The 1001 Nights has become a reality in Granada. This is the conclusion of our journey through a world of rocky coastlines and sandy beaches, magnificent cities and Moorish castles. An atmospheric land steeped in a wealth of history.